Hi, I'm John Atack,
I'm Sam Atack.
and we're going to talk about loyalty, but we're going to talk about loyalty as it relates to gangs, cults, and professions. And do you want to say something a little bit about our specific topic here, or would you like me to?
Our specific topic?
Yeah, what it is that's made us to make this video?
The failure in the police system in America.
Yeah. And so this is to do with the Black Lives Matter campaign, which we support as long as it's non-violent, and inequalities that have existed in the United States from the very beginning, when the states were first united by George Washington and co. Washington, of course, kept slaves, which is an odious and disgraceful practice. And it wasn't until 1863, with the proclamation of emancipation in the middle of the awful Civil War, that the manumission, as it's called, of slaves occurred. And despite that, and Reconstruction after the war, and the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, to which such heroes as Edgar Mevers and Martin Luther King gave their lives, we're still in a situation where terrible, despicable acts are taking place. So why are we talking about loyalty, though, in that case? Have you got any idea about that? Why loyalty is significant?
Because when a cop messes up, it seems the whole system jumps in to try and protect them.
And I would say that's like a gang, it's like a cult, and it's something that you'll also see, say, in the medical profession or the legal profession. In this country, for many years, the Law Society, a bunch of lawyers, has monitored the activity of lawyers. Within the National Health Service, there are all sorts of ways of supposedly checking on professionals, but they cover up for each other. So we're going to talk about cover-ups, and we're going to talk about snitching. There's a wonderful film called Serpico. I think it's Al Pacino, actually. I hope I'm not wrong on that. It's a long time since I saw it, about a real event that occurred in New York, where a policeman, I think in the early 1970s, joined up, all enthusiastic to help protect and serve, the motto of the police in the earth, and discovered that he was pretty much like The Shield, the series, where he was being asked to take bribes. I believe it's true to say that the largest distributor of heroin in the United States was the New York Police Department at that time. I'm told that they're the people who learned how to use baby talc to cut it. And you're kind of going, hang on a minute.
What?
But we're dealing with an ethos. We're dealing with a spirit of community within a group. When I was at school, I went to what was the most prestigious school in the county, which isn't really saying very much, in Staffordshire. King Edward VI Grammar School, where Dr. Samuel Johnson wasn't educated, according to his own account, and neither was I. And there was this code, which was that you didn't snitch, you didn't grass, you didn't inform on anybody who'd done something. And this is a really, really stupid idea, because in terms of honour and integrity, to conceal an offence is... what's the movie? Again, Al Pacino. This is a video about Al Pacino movies. The Scent of a Woman, where a young man is asked to inform on his fellows. And in that circumstance, one can see that there's a kind of authoritarian pressure where he is being threatened, even though he is not the person who committed the act. So the integrity of friendship is being questioned. And I think quite rightly, he refuses to snitch. So there are situations where honour does demand that you don't. If the headmaster's car, beautiful new car, had a great big balloon full of paint ditched on it, that it is right to stay silent. But we have a real problem. I think Jeffrey Wigand was the man about whom the movie The Insider was made. And Russell Crowe stars as Wigand. And he breaks ranks with the tobacco industry. He's employed, he's under a non-disclosure agreement, one of these terrible things. Saying something about weddings in the Trump family where everybody who attends has to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's like, oh, come on, guys. This has gone too far. And Wigand spoke out against the tobacco industry and proved that the seven dwarves, as they're called, the seven heads of the big tobacco companies, Browns, British American, Liggett and Myers, what have you, had all lied under oath. Ah. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. They lied in saying that they believed that nicotine was not addictive. Yeah. And he produced a huge hoard of documents about the nicotine delivery system. That's what they called cigarettes, the nicotine delivery system. And how could they make it more rapidly addictive? Yeah. Yeah. How could you get it so a 13-year-old would smoke a cigarette and they'd have to smoke more? There is no integrity involved, and they ended up having to fork out billions of dollars for their criminal activities. I think they should have been sent to prison too, the lot of them, for perjury. So how has this infected our law enforcement system? Well, I think it's just tribalism. I think it's just the idea of honour among thieves. Yeah. And it is perhaps the most significant problem in the world today. The problem of corruption. The problem that people bakshish, they pay bribes, and this is how certain systems work. And if you don't bribe people, well, they don't get paid enough, so they need the bribes to keep running. This has happened throughout history, and wherever it happens, you will find corruption within the legal system. And well, I agree with the point that education is fundamental to society, though I'm not very happy with the way it's being done, almost anywhere in the world. I think that the legal system is the real foundation of a true civilization. And as long as there is any deception or corruption in such a system, then we will all suffer. So we need a shift towards making heroes of people like Wigand who blow the whistle, instead of their lives being destroyed, which is what usually happens, because of this peculiar tribal attitude. It's like the vendetta attitude, that, your granddad hurt my granddad, so I'm going to hurt you, which is the kind of...
Yeah, just any arbitrary group that you suddenly just feel a part.
I'm wearing a blue uniform, so now I belong to this group. And the thing is that our loyalty should be towards other human beings, should be towards human society. And if we are to have justice, then it must be complete and absolute. So we also want to point out that the police do an incredible job. They do all sorts of things that are dangerous and scary. In the US in particular, and it's not happening everywhere, but in places like South Central in Los Angeles, in parts of New York, in Chicago, police officers risk their lives on a daily basis whenever they go out because of what's happened within the culture. It's not true in maybe Boise, Idaho. There are other places where police officers can go for 20 years without ever taking their weapon out. So, but they are willing to risk their lives. They have to clean up after the horrible offences that they look into. They see things that are incredibly traumatizing. Following up some evil serial killer who chops people up and things like this. It's got to be a bit of a shock to the system doing that. And they protect the rest of the society from that horror. Good police officers. So I would say that we need to reward the heroic actions of police officers more. We need to respect those police officers. We need to look at police departments that don't have a history of corruption, that aren't going out and fundamentally murdering members of the public. and most especially non-white members of the public. But it's not the ethos is there should not be any racism within the police force, but there's also this sense of, well, I'm going to cover up. There was a situation, in the 1970s where, oddly enough, a black man was beaten up by the police officers of the Metropolitan Police Force in London. There were 18 officers on duty that night. 6 of them were involved in this event. The other 12 knew who those 6 were, and they refused to testify. I believe they should all have been dismissed, and they should all have been given a sentence of some kind for their failure to cooperate with the justice system. This gang loyalty, this being loyal to a uniform, being loyal to your friends, I understand it, but it is destroying our society. In the United States in particular, you have the situation where, it's not, as our friend Yuval says, it's not guns that kill people, it's bullets. It is peculiar that there are places where guns are available, and the example given by NRA supporters is Switzerland, where all adult males of significant mental competence actually have an assault weapon at home.
And bullets locked up.
This is the point, that they don't have any bullets for them. So this is a completely specious argument. In Canada, they have come to ban assault weapons recently, even though their death toll is so much lower. In the US, we're seeing the proliferation of school shootings, which is not something that happens in the UK. It's not something that happens in Europe generally. And yet in the US, we have a culture of violence. Until we have a police force that is honourable, we will not have a society that is honourable. Until we make heroes out of whistleblowers and heroes out of decent, honest police officers, we're not going to have a decent society. So I'm told that in the US, the empathy quotient test is being used, and that high empathy people are rejected by the police. Now, I think it's reasonable that if somebody is a super empath, that maybe they shouldn't be in the police force because they'll let people get away with things. But it's also true that if they have low empathy, that they are dangerous to all of us. And so such people should be rooted out. We'd also like to see, however, very much their psychopathy checklist revised, being used for all applicants for work in the police. So that if people do prove to be high on that register, and you can score up to 40 on it, anything over 30 means that you're what Hare would classify as a psychopath. Anything between 4 and 30, he would classify you as a sociopath. So one would say that unless somebody has a score of less than 4 on this test, they shouldn't be allowed into the police. They most certainly should not have high rank. And there should be training. So tell them about IRA.
IRA's intelligent disobedience idea that people should be trained not to follow orders, not to do certain things if they disagree with those things. That quite often it's just routine just to follow orders, to just cover up if somebody tells you to. Whereas they should have a culture where if you see something, or if you think something's wrong,
asked to do something wrong,
which is wrong, you can. Well, you say that to the person who's telling you to do that, and where that's an acceptable thing to do. And if you turn out to be right, you should be rewarded for doing that.
And let's throw another movie into the mix, which is the movie Crash, and a fantastic movie which won an Oscar, where you do see this dilemma between 2 police officers. One of them played by Matt Dillon. I don't remember the name of the other actor, who also does a fine job. Paul Haggis was the director. And in this movie, you have a racist incident, and which is on Matt Dillon's part,
Yeah.
and you have a horrible incident where a couple are stopped, and the woman is basically sexually harassed by a police officer. She's felt up by the police officer, and so his assistant, the rookie cop, asks to be reassigned, and you get this thing about, well, you'll have to say that you've suffered from terrible flatulence, so you've got to be in the car on your own. It's the only way that you can do this. And then he ends up becoming involved in something which we won't spoil the plot for. So there are moral dilemmas, but the pack loyalty, this is something that, in the blood feud, the idea of, us versus them, we're black, you're white, we're white, you're black. I've said this before and I'm going to keep saying it, we're all black. And I'm not saying this to talk about colour, I'm saying it to talk about genetics. That when we talk about racism, the races are simply distinctions of the same family. We're all related, we're all cousins. The mitochondrial Eve of 238,000 years ago. There may be some question about this, but I'm not sure because research changes. But it was said that 238,000 years ago, there is DNA that was taken from, I think, 147 placentas all around the world, and they found this common point in the mitochondria, the bacteria that live in human cells and without which we could not live. There's a kind of time, there's a chronological record in there, and at 238,000 years, we're all descended from the same woman, the mitochondrial Eve. And I think that the idea of dividing ourselves out and saying, well, I'm Scottish and you're a Sassenach, which, by the way, is a Scottish word for Saxon, or, I'm Egyptian and you're Mexican, or these divisions of nationalism are false. That we are a human family, and if we don't act as a human family, then our great-grandchildren are doomed. We need to get ourselves together if we're going to maintain an environment that is friendly for human beings. We need to stop fighting with one another. We need to stop war, because otherwise we're stuffed, we're gone. So Ira also put forward the concept, this is Ira Chalef, of whose work we continue and will continue to promote. He's a dear friend of mine. I've known him for more than 40 years. And I admire his work tremendously. And he's also a very decent and honourable human being, in my long experience of him. A very caring person. He put forward the idea of courageous followership decades ago. And that's the idea of being strong enough to challenge a leader who wants you to do the wrong thing. Now, the Nuremberg trials, it was frequently heard that a soldier would say, Befehl ist Befehl. Orders are orders. I'm just doing what I was told. And it was determined at Nuremberg that's not a defence.
Yeah.
That if you commit an immoral act, even if it follows the law of your country, and this is where Goering pleaded, high head of the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, pleaded that it was the law of his country to do what he did. And what came forward there, and this is a very important point that is missed, if a policeman does something that's within the law but against humanity, at that point their defence is Befehl ist Befehl. I'm following orders. So if there is a law that is anti-human, anti-social, or destructive towards human beings, and we would suggest that the century-long prohibition of cannabis in this country since 1928 in the UK, 1924 I think in Canada, and actually the 1937 the Marijuana Tax Act, which didn't make cannabis illegal. It just meant that for every dollar's worth of cannabis you sold, you had to pay $100 tax.
Yeah, so practically made it illegal.
Well, and they didn't print any certificates.
Oh,
they
yeah,
knew
of course.
that nobody was going to
would
apply.
buy. Yeah.
And so you went from the situation where, in fact, there were cannabis cafes all over New York and Chicago, and they're lost to history now. We kind of think of Holland as being the place where they started in the late 70s. But the idea that many people, for the use or possession of this particular drug, have been sent to prison, and that the police complied with this, when there is no, we're now in a situation where 11 US states have legalized, Canada and Uruguay have legalized, and I think now 31 states permit cannabis for medical use. We're still in the dark ages here in the UK, I'm afraid, though as yet nobody's produced any evidence against this. So whether police are involved in applying a law that is anti-human, then there are still questions, and there is still a responsibility. To just say, I'm just doing my job, is not good enough. I'm happy to say there's a group called LEAP in the United States, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, which is actually been around for quite a while, where members of the police force and former police officers are saying, why are we prohibiting this? Why aren't we treating this as a health problem, so that if somebody is having problems, and certainly drugs like heroin, cocaine, amphetamines, barbiturates can cause dreadful health problems, if we treat it as a health problem instead of as a way of criminalizing largely the black population in the United States. I mean, it's been said that under the laws of 1900, if they were applied today, 60% of the people in prison in the United States would not have committed any criminal offence. Wow. And the US is astonishing, the highest per capita prison population of anywhere in the world. California a few years ago exported 80,000 prisoners to another state. Well, that's how many people we've got in prison in the UK. And that was just one state being able to export that number. This is not going to lead to a society that is not corrupt. The United States is an incredibly corrupt country. So we have to live together. We have to live without corruption. And so what we'd like to see, what we'd love to see, is alongside the Black Lives Matter campaign, which we fully support as long as it's non-violent, we would like to see a Cops Integrity Matters campaign where there are rewards for police officers who have the courage to stand up against injustice, to stand up against antisocial behaviour, and to understand that it is not disloyal to expose somebody like what's the character called, Mackie in the Shield.
It's courageous.
It's courageous. In fact, it's incredibly heroic to do that. So, cops' integrity matters. It really does. And taking we're going to say a black or white position, an us and them position, which we mean by that, it isn't going to help. We have to take a position that rewards those people who are good, conscientious and honourable, and which at least dismisses, names and shames those people who are not. It is dreadful looking back historically and seeing the way that, say, Yulia May-Love, who was shot in front of her children, shot dead with 8 rounds in front of her children, over, I think, a $26 utility bill that was unpaid. And she lost her temper, and she'd got a kitchen knife, and she threw it at one of the officers, so they shot her dead. That police officers have to know that they will face justice. They won't get away with it just because they're in a blue uniform.
Yeah.
And they also need to know, the good police officers need to be teaching the bad police officers. The good police departments need to be teaching the bad, and they need to be employing Ira Chalef and people who understand courageous leadership to actually give them the balls, the courage to stand up. And, as an experienced whistleblower myself, I can attest that you really do walk into a swamp when you dare to stand up against a powerful organisation. But in the long run, it may not be worth it for the whistleblower, but it should be. But it is worth it for society. Without integrity, our society is not a civilization. And I hope one day that we will achieve civilization, because otherwise we're screwed. Do you have any thoughts beyond that, Sam?
Yeah, but we should end.
Okay, he doesn't want to tell you what he's thinking. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and keep it in mind, cops' integrity matters, and we will see you again very, very soon, we hope. Thank you so much. I'm John Atack.
I'm Sammy Tank.
Cops' integrity matters.